Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon if you are in Asia. I wanted to introduce our new webinar that our chamber is happy and proud to organize. You know that it's a tradition in China each year, and it's foreseen by the law. The National People's Congress is gathering in the month of March, and it is a moment of utmost importance in the political and economic life of China. This year, we had the famous two sessions already held, and it's important to know what has been decided, what are the new tendencies for the China's economy, for China's political life. It has indeed an impact on our business as foreign entrepreneurs going to China, doing business in China. What are the priorities? What are the challenges? That is something we are going to discuss today, how to navigate the changing economic landscape, especially at a time of important changes in the world policy, especially due to the new presidency in the United States of America. We have the chance to have as a speaker Mr. Angus To. Mr. To, who's based in Hong Kong, is the Deputy Head of Research at ICBC International Holdings Limited. In his role, he's responsible for the fixed income research, giving insight into onshore and offshore bond markets, as well as delivering timely commentary on various market hot topics. Mr. To has over 10 years of experience in research and analysis. And prior to joining ICBC International, he was a macroeconomic analyst on the fixed income research team at BNP Paribas in Hong Kong. He holds a master's degree in finance from Lancaster University in the United Kingdom and have the Chartered Financial Analyst designation. So before giving the floor to Mr. To, I also wanted to thank very much ICBC Bank for having made this webinar possible. It's always a pleasure to cooperate with them. I'm also happy to welcome among our listeners our diplomats in Beijing and in Hong Kong, as well as Mr. Dupré from Flanders Investment and Trade. So, Mr. To, I am happy to give you the floor. I also telling our listeners that they have the possibility to raise some questions, to ask some questions through the chat box of which is at your disposal here, and we will have little sessions of questions and answers afterwards. Mr. To, you have the floor. Thank you.
All right. Hi. Thank you. Thank you. Just bear with me a few seconds. I'm going to share my screen first.
Yes.
Okay. Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great privilege to be invited by the Belgian-Chinese Chamber of Commerce to participate in this event and to share our view on the Chinese economy and some key takeaways from the recent National People's Congress meeting. As you know, China has now emerged as the second largest economy in the world. It has also become an important market for every global investors like you. So I hope my presentation today would give you a clearer understanding about the current status of the Chinese economy and what opportunities it is offering to you. My presentation today will be divided into 3 parts. First, I would go through with you some of the latest developments in the Chinese economy. What are the challenges it is facing now, and how the Chinese government is responding. And then in the second part, which is also the key part of my presentation today, I will share with you some of our thoughts on the recent National People's Congress meeting, which was concluded earlier of the month. By doing this, we would be able to have some senses regarding the persistence of the government for the coming year and what it would be doing to address the headwinds to economic growth coming from both internally and externally. Finally, in part 3, we would investigate the potential of a deeper cooperation between Europe and China and see what areas would offer more room and opportunities for the European investors. So without further ado, I will begin with the latest development of the Chinese economy. Well, admittedly, the Chinese economy is now facing with some new challenges after years of spectacular growth. This is primarily due to an unfavorable global backdrop, and for example, the uncertainties in global monetary policy, and there is also a rising geopolitical tension. Both are weighing on the growth outlook of the Chinese economy. But having said that, the Chinese economy has managed to maintain on a steady growth trajectory over the past 2 years. For example, the Chinese economy actually grew by 5% last year, which has matched the official growth target of 5%. In particular, growth accelerated to 5.4% during the 4th quarter last year, which was also the fastest growth in 1.5 years. The data for the first 2 months of this year came out recently, actually have continued to point to a robust economic growth. We believe these are highlighting the significant progress in the higher credit development and the success in the structural reform of the Chinese economy. We expect the growth will remain stable at around 5% this year. If we put it into a global perspective, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, actually projects the world economy to grow at a pace of around 3.3% for this year and next year. So in other words, China will continue to be one of the fastest growing key economies in the world. And with China continues its modernization and together with the improvement in total factor productivity, we are optimistic that the Chinese economy is still staying on the course for a period of more steady growth in the years ahead. Actually, this optimism is shared by many global investors, as there are evidence that the global investors are now turning more upbeat on the Chinese economic outlook. In specific, there are signs that global investors are starting to increase their allocation to Chinese assets again, including both the bond and equity securities. Specifically, in the bond market, we have seen some strong inflow to the onshore Chinese bond market since the 4th quarter of 2023, following consecutive quarters of outflow in the previous quarters. This trend of inflow has actually continued during the course of last year, and in total, there was over $50 billion of capital has flown into the onshore Chinese bond market last year. So we believe this is an indication of a strong international interest in Chinese bonds, as well as a demonstration of the progress in the RMB internationalization. Foreign investors are now holding over 4 trillion RMB of onshore Chinese bond, according to the data by the Chinese Central Bank. A similar trend actually was seen in the equity market, as the data from the Institute of International Finance suggests that over 11 billion US dollar of funds have flown into the Chinese equity market during the course of last year. So we believe this robust inflow is suggesting an increasing confidence in the long-term growth prospect of the Chinese economy by the global investors. In fact, we believe the long-term growth potential of the Chinese economy would remain promising, with consumption and investment would continue to remain the key engine of economic growth. From 2020 to 2025, the Chinese economy is projected to grow at a pace of around 5%. Then growth is likely to slow down to 4.5% during 2026 to 2030. And then growth is expected to moderate further to around 3.8% during the year 2031 to 2035. However, despite this expected slowdown, the Chinese economic growth will continue to outpace most of the world economy, and we believe it will remain a very attractive destination for long-term investment. However, to remain on a steady growth trajectory, China must need to overcome a few challenges first. One of these challenges is an insufficient demand facing the Chinese economy. As we know, household disposable income growth in China has been slowing down in recent years, and the wealth effect brought by the booming property market has also diminished. These are jointly weighing on the consumer sentiment in China. And meanwhile, fixed asset investment growth has also been slowing down, as there is an insufficient space for more investment in the traditional manufacturing sector. Specifically, per capita household disposable income increased by 6.1% during 2023, but it has slowed down further to a 5.1% growth last year. And meanwhile, the fixed asset investment growth is still being weighed on by the fall in property market amid a property market downturn. Overall, fixed asset investment grew by 3.2% last year, which improved from the 3% growth during 2023. But it is still more than 1 percentage point below the level we saw prior to the pandemic. So these are the indication of an insufficient demand facing the Chinese economy at the moment, both from the perspective of consumption and investment. And then another challenge is an increasing financial risk. We must admit that the financial system in China, to some extent, is exposed to the risk resulting from the property market, the concerns over local government debt, and also the smaller financial institution. As we know, local governments in China rely heavily on the proceeds from land sales to repay their debt. However, the property market correction has increased the financial pressure of the local governments and also weakened their ability to repay their debt. So as a result, they need to replace their old debt with some new debt, which then increase the size of the local government debt and also increase the risk of default by the local governments. Then as the risk in the property market and the local government debt increase, the smaller financial institution would also face liquidity risk, as they have a strong tie to the local government and to the property market. So this is basically how the risk is being transmitted between the property market, local government, and the smaller financial institution, which also increase the risk facing the financial system. So this is the financial risk facing the Chinese economy. And then the next challenge is an increasing external risk. As we know, the international political landscape is getting more complicated. This increasing geopolitical tension is also posing risk to the China's external demand and to its capital market. In specific, trade protectionism is on the rise as the Trump administration is imposing additional tariffs on goods going into the United States, including goods from China. This is causing a big disruption to global trade and could also hurt the demand further for Chinese exports. In addition, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine has also caused global inflation to surge and also triggered the aggressive interest rate hike by the US Federal Reserve and other global central banks during 2022 and 23. This has caused some capital outflow from the emerging market to the developed market as the stronger dollar and the high interest rate weighing on, which has also hurt the Chinese capital market over the last 2 years. Global inflation has now slowed down, and the US and European central banks have also started to cut interest rate again, which has removed some of the pressure. However, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine is still continuing, and there are also some uncertainties in the Middle East region. So we believe the ongoing geopolitical tensions and the additional tariffs by the Trump administration will cause inflation to rebound and also lead to some more uncertainties in global monetary policy. This is another risk the Chinese economy is facing with now. Okay, so to address these challenges, the Chinese government has actually unveiled a series of measures last year. Most notable in September last year, they announced a basket of financial measures, including cut in the reserve requirement ratio, as well as cut in the policy rate, and also reduction in the mortgage interest rate, and also standardizing the minimum down payment ratio for all mortgages. They also introduced a new monetary policy tool to stabilize the stock market. All these measures are aiming at boosting economic momentum as well as to create a more accommodative financial environment for the Chinese economy. Then in November last year, the National People's Congress announced to increase the size of debt limit for local government by 6 trillion RMB over the next 3 years. This will be used for the swap of hidden debt. Meanwhile, they also announced to allocate additional 800 billion annually in the next 5 years through the issuance of special purpose bonds. This will also be used for swap of hidden debt of the local government. So in total, a total of 10 trillion RMB will be allocated for the swap of hidden local government debt over the next few years, which would lower the size of hidden debt significantly and promote financial stability in China. And then in December, the Central Economic Conference announced that a more proactive fiscal policy and a moderately loose monetary policy will be implemented for this year. So more policy measures are likely on the way to offer further support to the economy. We will go through some of these measures in the next session. But overall, we believe China has an ample policy room to address to different challenges, and that the Chinese economy is still offering a lot of opportunities for global investors with its great potential. Now we are going to move to the important part of the talk today, which is about the National People's Congress meeting. As just mentioned, the Central Economic Work Conference last December has already laid out the policy direction for this year. The National People's Congress meeting concluded earlier this month went on further to set out some more concrete targets and missions for this year. The NPC meeting is actually the most important annual event to look at if you want to take a look at the policy outlook of China. So in this session, I'm going to go through with you some of the important points so that you can have some senses regarding the annual economic plan of the Chinese government. The most important figure to look at from the NPC report is the GDP growth target. The growth target for this year is set at around 5%, which is at the same pace last year. We believe the government has taken a balanced approach when setting up this growth target. This is indicating the government's intention of maintaining a steady pace of growth while navigating global uncertainties. In fact, the growth target has been set at around 5% over the past 3 years. This compared with over 6% target between 2016 to 2021. This is highlighting the government's effort to achieve a high quality and a more sustainable growth in our view. Well, talking about sustainability, China is continuing to target a higher energy efficiency as it seeks to reduce energy consumption as measured in per unit of GDP by another 3% this year. This target actually increased from the 2.5% target compared with last year. We believe this is signaling an increasing effort in the pursuit of a sustainable growth and its commitment to deal with global climate change. And job creation is also the key in the annual economic plan, as China needs to create enough jobs for the university graduate. The NPC meeting suggested that China would create 12 million of new urban jobs this year and keep unemployment rate steady at around 5.5%. These targets are also consistent with the target in recent years, as the government demonstrating a consistent focus on economic stability and also improvement of livelihood. Additionally, consumer price inflation is targeted at around 2% for this year. This is actually lower than the target set out in previous years. We believe this is suggesting a rather benign inflationary pressure, as well as demonstrating the government's commitment to maintaining price stability. This inflation target should also offer some flexibility in the undertaking of monetary policy for the government to weather the uncertainties and to safeguard economic growth in our view. The table in page 12 is a summary table of the key economic and social targets over the past few years for easier comparison, which is for your reference. And then we move on page 13, which is about the fiscal policy. The Central Economic Work Conference in last December already suggested that a more proactive fiscal policy would be implemented for this year. So there is basically no surprise that we see some more aggressive fiscal target announced during the NPC meeting this year. In specific, the budget deficit as a percentage of GDP is set at around 4% for this year. This is higher than the 3% target last year. And then the size of deficit is expected to be around 5.66 trillion RMB, which is 1.6 trillion more than last year. And then issuance of local government special bond will increase to 4.4 trillion RMB, which is 500 billion more than last year. And then in addition, 1.3 trillion of RMB of long-term special government bond will be issued to carry out some strategic investment project as well as to support domestic consumption. So overall, the government has signaled a clear intention to safeguard economic growth through increasing fiscal spending. And we believe this is particularly important given the current circumstances of an increasing global uncertainty. So I think this is one of the key takeaways from the fiscal policy side. Of course, monetary policy is also the key in the fight against global uncertainties. And consistent with the statement from the Central Economic Work Conference, the MPC meeting explicitly stated that it would implement a moderately loose monetary policy for this year. This is actually the first time in over 10 years that China has signaled an accommodative monetary policy. And this is also suggesting a major shift from the prudent monetary policy stance in the past decade. It is something worth mentioning in our view. Under this policy stance, the government would cut required reserve ratio as well as to cut interest rate at appropriate times so as to ensure sufficient liquidity and to support economic growth. So overall, we believe the economic targets suggested in the MPC report is reflecting a very well-balanced approach. On one hand, it put maintaining steady growth and employment on top of the agenda. And on the other hand, it has left sufficient policy leeway to deal with global uncertainties. We believe this should pave the way for the Chinese economy to stay on course for a steady growth this year. Okay, next, after introducing the key economic targets in the MPC meetings, I will then go through with you some of the key tasks that the government has listed out in the MPC report. On top of the priority is boosting consumption and increasing investment return. This is actually the key to safeguard economic growth. To achieve this, China will launch large-scale infrastructure projects and to implement targeted measures to drive consumer spending. For instance, some of the proceeds from the special bond issuance mentioned earlier will actually be used in the program for replacing old consumer goods with the new ones. And meanwhile, China will continue to develop the new quality productive forces as a way to accelerate the modernization of its industrial system and also to improve total factor productivity. And in this regard, biomanufacturing, quantum technology, artificial intelligence, and 6G technology, etc., all will be the key focus of the government as they seek to increase investment in these areas. These efforts will ensure that China would remain at the forefront of technological transformation in an increasingly competitive global environment. Of course, for China to stay at the forefront of technological transformation, innovation will also be the key. In this aspect, China is committed to building a high-quality education system and to nurture high-skilled talents. They will also promote greater collaboration between college and industries so as to accelerate the development in some key technological areas. The aim is to be self-reliant in science and technology development so as to ensure national and economic securities. Meanwhile, China is also deepening the structural and market reform to create a more dynamic and efficient economy. Steps are actually being taken to remove the barriers that are hindering the private sector development. Further reforms in the fiscal system, in the tax system, as well as in the financial systems are all undergoing, which will ensure that economic policy would remain responsive to both domestic and global development. Furthermore, China also remains firmly committed to a high standard opening up. It is continuing to foster a global economic partnership as well as to promote bilateral trade. In this regard, more measures to support foreign trade are well expected. For example, the policy to improve financial services for trade financing and settlement, and also the expansion of export credit insurance, etc. Meanwhile, the Belt and Road Initiative will also continue to play an important role in China's effort to deepen regional economic cooperation. In fact, Chinese exports to the Belt and Road area have been growing robustly in recent years, which are also pointing to an initial success in the promotion of the Belt and Road Initiative. It is also demonstrating how China is weathering the headwinds from an escalating geopolitical tension through a greater global cooperation. China is also putting financial stability on top of the priority. As mentioned in the previous session, there is an increasing financial risk as a result of the risk transmitted between the property market, the local government debt, and the smaller financial institution. So in order to safeguard the health of the financial system, the government will continue their effort to stabilize the property market, to manage the risk in local government debt, as well as to strengthen the regulation of the smaller financial institution so as to avoid systematic risk to the economy. The debt swap program I mentioned in the previous session is actually one of the efforts how China is handling the risk in the financial system. And China is also putting a great focus on the rural development and agricultural modernization so as to ensure food security and to improve the living standard of the rural population. While the urbanization would continue to progress, the government would take a more balanced approach so as to narrow the gap between the urban and rural area. In particular, the government would focus on the areas which are less developed, such as the Northwest and the Central region. These are the measures to promote an inclusive economic growth by the Chinese government. Last but not least, environmental sustainability also remains a key target of the Chinese government as they are seeking to move forward to a greener economy and to achieve carbon neutrality. As mentioned in the previous session, the official target for this year is to reduce energy consumption per unit of GDP by another 3%. this is actually increased from the 2.5% target set last year. Investment in renewable energy, carbon market, and green finance are all expected to be increased further in order to support the transition to a greener economy. Meanwhile, pollution control measures would also be reinforced. We believe these measures are demonstrating the commitment to environmental sustainability by the Chinese government. And beyond the economic priorities, China is also focusing on improving people's well-being and social governance so as to promote social harmony and stability. Therefore, the government will put a greater emphasis on improving public health and social security system. This would be achieved through better medical services, better unemployment insurance, tax cut, and also employment subsidies, etc. The government would also support enterprises to create more new job opportunities. Additionally, there would be measures to promote cultural and ethical development. And China will also seek to improve government efficiency by streamlining the administrative operation and to accelerate the development of a digital government so as to offer more convenience to the Chinese people. So this is basically the work plan for the Chinese government for this year, as suggested in the NPC meeting. Looking further ahead, development of new quality productive forces will be the key to the long-term growth of China, as these forces will drive the development of high technologies such as artificial intelligence, biomedical, and integrated circuits, etc. The expansion of these industries will also generate some more investment opportunities in China. To this regard, China is actually planning ahead with some of the future industries, such as quantum technology and 6G technology, etc. They will also promote investment in research and development so as to enhance their global competitiveness with some cutting-edge innovation and industrial upgrade. So that's basically about the Chinese economy and some key takeaways from the NPC meeting. Now, I'm moving on to the next topic today, which is about the relationship between Europe and China and what opportunity a deeper cooperation between Europe and China can bring to the European investors. As we know, Europe and China have a long history of cooperation. This year actually marks the 50th anniversary of the diplomatic relationship between European Union and China. And despite an increasing global political tension, the relationship between Europe and China has been going from strength to strength, actually. In 2024, the bilateral trade between the EU and China has exceeded $700 billion, which has further cemented their position as the second largest trading partner to each other. And this dynamic trade relationship is actually characterized by a complementary economic structure between Europe and China in our view. In specific, Europe exports primarily high-end machinery, aerospace products, and automobiles to China. And China, meanwhile, supplies the European market with industrial goods, electronics, and consumer products, etc. And in addition to trade, China and Europe also have a strong investment link. Last year, the stock of two-way investment between Europe and China has exceeded $260 billion. We actually believe Europe and China are sharing some common visions in many key global agendas, such as globalization, environmental sustainability, and technological development, etc. So therefore, we believe there's an ample room of cooperation between Europe and China so as to create some more business opportunities. As both Europe and China are now undergoing an economic transformation, which is driven by digitalization, green energy development, financial innovation, and also the pursuit of reliable supply chain. This should present some great opportunities for a greater collaboration between the two, and also promote long-term stability and mutual economic growth in our field. One of the areas for a deeper collaboration could lie in the green energy and the carbon market development. As both China and Europe have set out some ambitious targets to achieve carbon neutrality, and they are both committed to emission reduction. So they will continue to invest heavily in the areas such as renewable energy, promotion of carbon trading, and also sustainable finance. By strengthening the collaboration in the development of solar power, wind power, hydro power, the two economies can work together to drive innovation, increase efficiencies, and also promote global sustainability. We believe such cooperation will not only enhance energy security, but it will also accelerate the transition towards a low-carbon economy, and in turn, positioning both Europe and China as the leaders and models in the fight against global climate change. Another area of potential collaboration is about the development of digital economy and the governance of AI development. In fact, the rapid transformation of industries is presenting both opportunities and challenges. As artificial intelligence is reshaping our economic and social structure, concerns surrounding AI ethics, data privacy, and cybersecurity have also taken a center stage. Both China and Europe have introduced some regulatory measures to address these challenges, emphasizing the need for a proper governance framework in AI development. Aligning the governance framework between both economies could help to create a more transparent and secure digital landscape, also fostering innovation while ensuring an ethical development in the AI aspect. They can also work together to establish some common standards for data protection and digital security, so as to pave the way for some more cross-border cooperation in the digital sector. Another potential area of cooperation is in the development of semiconductor and other advanced manufacturing. Both China and Europe recognize the strategic importance of semiconductor technology when securing economic competitiveness and also national security. While Europe is seeking to enhance its independence in semiconductor production, China is also scaling up the development of the next generation semiconductor technology so as to ensure a supply chain reliance. Cooperation in the area of semiconductor development including infrastructure and talent development, can help to strengthen global supply chain, reduce dependency, as well as to drive economic technological breakthroughs that can benefit both Europe and China. Finally, financial market integration and green finance also present some great opportunities for a deeper economic cooperation between Europe and China. As China is continuing to open up its financial market, it is also creating a lot of opportunity for the European investors, particularly in the areas of green finance and ESG investment, where Europe is already at the forefront. We believe by promoting a deeper cooperation in the financial market, both Europe and China can enhance the sustainable investment flows and also promote development of more green financial products. Such cooperation will not only provide some new opportunities for the investor, but also contribute to the global agenda of a more responsible and sustainable economic growth. So this is coming to the end of my sharing today. To sum up, we believe that the Chinese economy would continue to grow at a robust pace, and that a growing Chinese economy will continue to offer a lot of opportunities for the global investors. Particularly for Europe, there are many potential of a deeper cooperation between Europe and China, as they are sharing some common visions. By working together in green energy, digital governance, semiconductor technology, and in the financial markets, etc., we believe Europe and China will unlock the synergy that will bring sustainable economic development and also stability to both of their economies. Okay, that's it of my presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. To. Thank you for your very detailed explanation. Let me remember that you first detailed the latest developments of the Chinese economy with the challenges, the new challenges it is facing, especially the uncertainties in the global monetary policy, the rising geopolitical tensions. But you mentioned that it maintained a steady growth trajectory by 5% in 2024. IMF foresees 3.3% this year and next year. There is also improvement in total productivity. The long-term growth potential remains promising, but you have also mentioned that the household disposable income growth has slowed. There is insufficient demand, increasing geopolitical tensions. A series of measures, you have detailed that, have been taken by the Chinese government since September 2024, like a supportive monetary policy, like a proactive fiscal policy, for instance. You have also then second part of your speech is to detail the takeaways from the National People's Congress meetings with China's 2025 economic target, like GDP growth around 5%, like reduce energy consumption, like 12 million new urban jobs to be created, like a consumer price inflation of 2%. Another point is the fiscal policy with a budget deficit that will be around 4%, increase fiscal spending to support growth, implement a moderately loose monetary policy, the top of the agenda being to maintain growth and employment. The key task detailed by the decisions of the NPC is boosting consumption and investment returns, is developing new quality productive forces, is to put the accent on science and education to boost performance of innovation system. Let me say here that it is very interesting at a time when in the other part of the world, in the US, the government is planning to suppress the Ministry of Education. You have also underlined the continued market reform with the stimulation of the vitality of the market, which is also very important for our business people from Europe. You have detailed many measures like advanced rural revitalization, advanced new urbanization, cut carbon emissions, reduce pollution, pursue green development, and strategic planning for development of new quality productive forces. And last but not least, the last part of your speech was to explain where is the cooperation between Europe and China and what could be envisaged, what would be the opportunities, for instance, in green energy, in digital economy, in semiconductors and advanced manufacturing, and financial market integration and green finance. So all this is a very clear explanation, Mr. To. Thank you very much for that. We have now the possibility to have some questions and answers. So please, ladies and gentlemen, don't hesitate to raise some questions or make some remarks in the chat box. We have a first question from Mr. Gao Jun, who asked the following question: what is the expectation of Mr. To concerning the trade dispute between China and Europe? Would there be a positive development in 2025? So, Mr. To.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the trade. I think that the trade dispute between China and Europe is not that. I mean, the gap is not that much if we compare with the trade dispute between China and the United States. The Trump administration is imposing many additional tariffs on all the imports to the United States, whereas comparatively, EU also imposed some additional tariff on Chinese export, primarily on electric vehicles, etc. So we see the approach by the Europe is more targeted, and I think this is a more if compared to the United States, the scale is much smaller, and I think there is possibility that this can be solved by negotiation between Europe and China. I think Europe and China have been maintaining a relatively good relationship in the trade aspect. So I think there as well some room for them to negotiate a deal and to try to avoid this dispute to get bigger. Because both China and I think both China and Europe are important trading partner to each other, and they would also try to maintain a good relationship, particularly under this increasing geopolitical tension, while US is imposing different tariff on all the goods. I think the cooperation between Europe and China would prove to be more important.
Another question I'm raising, you have mentioned that the government now is implementing a looser monetary policy, is also allowing a higher deficit with specific targets. Aren't you afraid that this could bring more inflation in the Chinese economy?
We are not quite worried about the inflationary pressure in China at the moment because we are actually facing a pretty benign inflationary pressure in China. During the first 2 months, actually, CPI inflation has witnessed a drop. And last year, the overall CPI inflation was just 0.7%. So overall, inflationary target, the inflationary pressure is much smaller if you compare to other parts of the world. The government is targeting a 2% target for this year of the CPI inflation. This is already down from the 3% last year. So this is also already signaling a more benign inflationary pressure for this year. So I mean, even the monetary policy is going to be more accommodative compared with last year. We do not see there's that would increase a lot of the inflationary pressure because we are seeing a deflationary pressure in the upstream. In upstream, for example, the producer price in inflation is still falling, and that there is still, to some extent, a overcapacity in many industries. So we believe that the looser or the more accommodative monetary policy is unlikely to trigger a higher inflation in China.
Thank you. We have another question from Mr. Marc Saillon. You briefly touched on healthcare and social security, but you didn't mention the impact of demographic and on the elderly care sector. So isn't there also a big challenge? Population is aging in China, which means also more expenses in social security, healthcare.
Yes, the demographic is shifting in China, and that in particular the total population is falling. Well, there's also the population is also aging. But at the moment, we are not too worried because we are actually seeing that despite the aging society, it is actually generating a lot of demand for medical and healthcare services. This is also contributing to some of the economic activities. So to some extent, that could also bring in some new business model. For example, we are seeing a strong demand in some healthier food or services, and people in China are now, because of the aging society, they are also paying more attention to a healthy lifestyle where they probably doing some more exercise. So this is also generating more revenues in sportswear industry, etc. So although we are seeing a demographic change in the population, but it is also generating some new business opportunity for the economy.
Yeah, thank you. The question from Mr. Baptiste Brum. What is China's plan to become more attractive to European companies to invest in China, as Europe's decision makers are now more careful about China, encourage mainly protect Europe policies. So what is your comment on that?
Oh, okay. I think we should not forget China is a very big economy with a population of 1.4 billion. So it is a very big market, and such a big market should be attractive for every investor, I think. In particular, we are seeing a strong growth in consumption. Although, as I mentioned in the presentation, the disposable income, the growth of income is slowing down in China. However, the overall income is still growing. In particular, the income growth in the rural area is particularly higher than in the urban area. As we know, the rural area, I mean the rural population, as their income increase, they tend to be more willing to spend. So I think this is one of the consumption is one of the great potential in China, and this should create more opportunities for the world investor, not only for the European investor. And also China is also continuing to opening up its economy. For example, they are removing more restriction in investment. For example, last year they basically removed all the restriction in investment in the manufacturing industry. So it is getting easier for global investors to get into the Chinese market and tap the 1.4 billion market, which is, I mean, this should be very attractive for all investors.
Thank you, Mr. To. Well, we are arriving now to the end of our session. I wanted to thank again very much Mr. Angus To for his very clear explanations of the important decisions that have been taken during the session of March of the National People's Congress, with the impact that can have on the cooperation between EU and China, and the concrete also impacts for our entrepreneurs and the opportunity it creates. So thank you very much for all these explanations. I wanted also to say that our session is tape recorded, and you have the possibility to listen again to it or to mention it to other persons who could not attend. I wanted also to invite our listeners for our next webinars. There will be a webinar on China-India relations and its impact, also for our business on China-US relations. There will be also in the following weeks, we hold our traditional career event with opportunities. You have this now here. We will participate to a trade mission organized together with the province of Flemish Brabant, where the governor of Flemish Brabant will go to Chengdu with a delegation of companies that will take place from the 13th until the 18th of April. So, ladies and gentlemen, we stay committed. We hope to see you and meet you at our next events. Thank you for attending this. Thank you again to Mr. To, and let's stay in touch. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.